Customer came in saying that she started having a strange loud noise when driving home from work, but just kept turning the volume up on her stereo, and this is what the mechanics found. This customer rolled in with his Chrysler minivan because he had a problem stopping it after he had worked on the brakes himself a few days ago. This customer had just bought this used truck off Craigslist and said that he thought it looked good from afar but never actually went underneath it and ended up paying almost $5,000 for this. The owner of this Toyota rolled in because he had started having a dunka dunka sound at all speeds. Customer rolled in saying that his car has started handling like Bambi on ice and that he sometimes hears clunking noises when he pulls out of his driveway. This mechanic didn't need to plug in his diagnostic tool on this one because the engine had problem written all over it. The owner of this car had complained about rough idling for the past few weeks, but the other shop said it was probably nothing serious. He then came into this shop on a tow truck and the mechanics found that the engine had turned itself into a gelato stand. This customer just rolled in saying that his clutch feels a little loose and thought it might need some servicing. Customer came in complaining about a loud dunka clunka sound when going over 80 miles per hour. The owner of this one rolled in saying that he has some problems with the brakes, but was only willing to pay for new brake pads and nothing else, because according to him, his brakes were pretty much brand new. The mechanic who got underneath this one showed the customer the cracked differential and the drive shaft that moved in directions it was definitely not designed for. But the customer just nodded and drove out the parking lot fast because he said he needed to buy a pack of Winstons before he could take a look at the price quote. This vehicle rolled in because the engine was running really poorly and had started to run pretty hot. Turns out that whoever did the last oil change, which was only 2 months ago, had put a mixture of ATF and engine oil into the engine and told the customer that they had done an engine flush to increase fuel efficiency. Customerstates hit a hole in the road. This customer came in complaining about a ticking sound. Nice. The mechanic working on this 4Runner pulled the drive axle and found a repair job that can only be described as pure optimism. The owner of this car had it in at a different shop to replace a couple of transmission gaskets as it was leaking transmission fluid all over the place. Turns out that the other shop had a pretty rough way of working on cars. This car came in for some tire repair and bodywork after having brushed against another car on the highway. This customer had fixed a fuel leak by himself, but had to come in because his car was now leaking even more than before. Customerstates hit a hole in the road doing 50 miles an hour. The owner of this car came in because his car ran rough after he'd let a guy from Craigslist install a new timing belt for him in exchange for a crate of 12 chickens. And this Chevy Trailblazer was in for an oil change when the mechanic saw that the owner had DIY'd their own exhaust. This customer came in saying that their car feels bumpier than usual. And this customer came in because they had some tire leaks and lots of vibration when driving. Customer states, truck's been making a little knock when braking, but my neighbor serviced it last fall and did a really thorough job on it, even got me some sportier calipers. Customer came in with starting issues and a burnt smell 3 days after they installed a light bar that they got for $1 plus shipping from a Chinese website. This customer came in with their car complaining about a clunking sound after their friend had done some questionable quick fixes for them. Customer states, steering wheel feels kinda heavy. This Toyota Land Cruiser came in because the 4-wheel drive didn't work and it simply wouldn't move forward or backwards. The owner of this Hyundai had been driving on what he described as pretty okay tires, and had only come in because his brother kept telling him to get new ones. Let's just say the customer is very lucky to have a brother that has more than 2 brain cells. This is how the 3-cylinder, 1-liter Ford EcoBoost engine looks after a bit of wear and tear. This customer had installed a lowering kit, all by themselves. And this is what a drive shaft looks like when it's been grinding its way through life for a little too long, while the owner figured it was probably just road noise. This vehicle was in because it had some major engine damage, and this is how the pistons looked like once the mechanic started working on it. This car came in with almost no brakes after the owner had done some brake work on it all by himself. Customer states, heard a loud bang after I hit something on the road. This drivetrain was spinning, technically. It was just doing it with a little extra spice added to it. Customer came in saying that his friend had told him that he could tune his car for him and easily squeeze an extra 100 horsepower out of it. But the only thing he ended up doing was putting the car on the back of a tow truck. Ah, satisfying. This Jeep Gladiator Rubicon rolled in after the owner had gone on a little off-road trip for the first time. The owner of this car had apparently been watching a few YouTube tutorials on how to upgrade his sound system and had gotten pretty far into the project before things got a little complicated. This car was in after the owner said that it had started sounding like a redneck beer car ever since their grandfather had attempted to install a new exhaust system on it but had forgot to use his good glasses and ended up cutting things that he shouldn't have. And this car came in with quite the oil leak after the owner had tried to fix it by himself using some silicone. This Chevy Express van rolled in after the engine had blown up. Apparently, the owner had ran the engine almost completely without oil, which caused the crankshaft to break in 4 pieces. The owner of this truck had been hearing a little groan from the front end for a few weeks, but figured it was nothing worth worrying about. The mechanic pulled the center cap and found that the differential had apparently been saving up on liquids for a while. Customer states, my Hyundai has brake issues, but it wasn't that long ago since I switched rotors. Do you think it could be the brake pads? Customer states, my friend recently helped me replace the water pump. Apparently, the gear had just fallen out on its own, said the mechanic. That's probably okay, right? This 2007 Audi A4 came in with some starting issues after the owner had switched the spark plugs by himself. Apparently, he had used some gasket maker to try and fix a leaking valve cover. And this is how you find out that whoever did the wiring on this one had gotten a little too creative with the cable placement. The owner of this Toyota Land Cruiser said that he did some work on the suspension by himself, but that he had started having a clunking sound ever since. The mechanic found the tie rods to be hanging on for dear life, only secured with a single tie wrap on each side. And this engine had some intake issues. This customer rolled in because of an oil leak after having been at a quick lube shop. This Toyota Prius came in after the owner had hit something on the road. And this is exactly why you always get undercarriage coating done earlier rather than later. And the owner of this car came in because they had a really loud exhaust sound after they recently had another shop install a lowering kit for them, which they had bought off of Facebook Marketplace. Customer states, "My brakes are squeaking hella bad, please advise." This Dodge Stealth came in because the engine light was on and it didn't want to run at idle after the owner had done some work on it by himself. The mechanic discovered that the issue was caused by a little clamp stuck inside the mass airflow sensor. And this customer had to come back to the shop after having said, "I know someone who can do it for less, thanks." Customer states, "Starting issues. I wonder what might be the cause." And this car was in because the gearbox was on its last legs, after the customer had failed to notice they had a slight transmission fluid leak. This Ford F350 had some ABS problems, and the customer had tried switching the entire ABS module for a used one together with a friend, but that unfortunately didn't fix the problem, so they had to come in to get it looked at. This 2022 Honda CR-V had just been in for some repairs, but accidentally caught on fire a few hours later due to a bad wire in the heated seat. And this Chevy Vortec engine had a bit of a coolant leak. The mechanic said that it was caused by a leaking intake gasket. Customer states, "My car's been making a little squeaking sound, but only in the morning. Once it warms up, it's totally fine. Can you check it out?" This customer had done their own DIY repair on their trailer hitch, but had failed a recent safety inspection and came in to have it repaired. When you're actually right on time for your service appointment. And this customer came in with a leaking tire after having hit a pothole doing 40 miles an hour. And this is what happens when you screw the spark plugs in too tight. The threads, they just don't want to leave the spark plug hole. The owner of this car had been dealing with a random stalling problem for weeks and couldn't quite pinpoint where it was coming from. Turns out it was the keychain the whole time. Customer states, "I'm pretty sure I bought a Ford pickup and not a John Deere tractor." A quick welding job later and the tractor sounded like a pickup again. The owner of this truck had gone off-roading, but done it without diff breathers, and had to come in because their diff had started to make a grinding sound. This is what the mechanic found once he had the truck in the shop. And sometimes, even the mechanics are surprised by what they find under the hood. Customer states, "Hit a huge acorn on the way back from my buddy's lake house. Can you just check her out underneath and make sure she's all good?" And the owner of this car said that he didn't like the original color of it and that taking it to a professional auto painter was way too expensive, and figured that he had good enough ventilation in one of his barns and already had some paint lying around, so he just ended up doing it all by himself. Sparky Sparky! This car came in with some starting issues and some burnt cables after the owner had done some electrical work on it all by himself. The mechanic working on this one found the dashboard covered in healing crystals and a purple shag rug on the driver's side floor. He later said it was the most spiritually prepared car he'd ever diagnosed. And when your transmission starts transmitting parts all over the place, it might be time to have it looked at. Customer states, I think I hit something on my way home from work. Customer states, my son borrowed my truck for the weekend and now I have a weird wheel noise. This truck came in because it needed some new tires. This drive shaft had apparently been doing its very best impression of a jump rope for quite some time now. This mechanic had finished doing an oil change on a customer's car, but had to help another customer and had let the intern reinstall the drain plug and splash shield for him, but it went a bit so-and-so. And this car apparently came with its own portable swimming pool. Probably smells really nice, especially on a warm, sunny day. Customer states, car feels like it's very wobbly. The mechanic working on this one opened the hood to find the engine doing its best impression of a hot spring, with coolant pouring out everywhere. This guy rolled into the shop with his truck saying that shifting gears feels like moving a spoon through a jar of cold honey, and this is what the transmission looked like once the mechanics opened it up. Choo choo! This car came in for a post-purchase inspection and this is what the technician found. And getting behind this car on the highway would definitely be at your own risk. And the owner of this car was apparently trying to go back to 1955 to tell his father that the future was going to be a crazy place, and that he should buy as much gold and land as he can, because his children and grandchildren will thank him. This Ford F-150 rolled in because it had a loud engine knock, even though the owner had constantly been topping the engine up with engine oil, but still couldn't for the life of him figure out what was causing it. Customer states, I keep hearing a clunking sound. And this car came in with a pretty rough idle that the owner was convinced was just a bad batch of gas after his father-in-law had done a tune-up on it a few months back. The mechanic pulled the intake manifold and found it looking like this. And this car rolled in on a tow truck because it had a broken CV axle after the customer said that they had started hearing a strange noise not too long ago, but had just kept on driving. And this window couldn't decide if it wants to go up or down. This customer apparently drove straight into a barbed fence, and this is the result. The mechanic working on this engine probably knew what he was going to find before he even got the head off. When he finally did, he found one of the pistons had gone on a permanent vacation to Scrappy Land. This customer came in with their car after they had, quote, pimped it out for the bush and just wanted the mechanic to have a look at it to make sure it all looked solid before heading out on a little adventure. Yum. Looks good. This customer had been smelling something musty for months and thought it was just the air freshener wearing off. The mechanic pulled the cabin air filter and found that it had turned itself into an organic compost storage unit. The owner of this car had bought it just 2 weeks ago, but had accidentally bumped into a bollard when parking in front of the grocery store and noticed a little tiny crack on the hood and wanted the mechanic to have a look. The owner of this cat dozer had some leaking parts fixed and oil topped up at another shop, but a few hours later the engine blew up. And this customer came in saying that every time he wants to wash the windshield, it washes the engine instead. And you gotta love that fix-a-flat. It's not messy at all. Customer came in saying that she had put some healing crystals on the start button a few months ago for good energy, but now the car won't start. This Chevrolet Silverado rolled into the shop because it had already started telling knock-knock jokes, even though it only had 30,000 miles on it. And this is from a 2001 Toyota Tacoma. Customer states, rattling sound from drivetrain, please advise. The mechanic who pulled the front wheel on this Mercedes truck found a wiring situation underneath that looked less like automotive repair and more like modern art. Turns out, a buddy of the owner had done some electrical work at some point and the cables had been slowly melting ever since. Customer came in with some major engine damage after he had tried doing a valve adjustment all by himself. Luckily for the customer, his insurance company agreed to replace the engine.